how I like to think about it and how I like to phrase it. And rather than power, I tend to replace that sentence with autonomy. Hello lads, hope you well. Today I wanted to continue on a theme that I've spoken about a few times on this channel, about taking responsibility, taking control, and basically, I guess, sort of shaping your own, well, maybe not destiny, that might be a strong word, but shaping your own path, certainly. I wanted to link this back to something that I was thinking about the other day. Obviously everyone knows the really famous saying of, with great power comes great responsibility, what Uncle Ben said to Peter Parker in Spider-Man, but that phrase sort of made me think a little bit about how I like to think about it and how I like to phrase it. And rather than power, I tend to replace that sentence with autonomy, in terms of autonomy comes with responsibility. Autonomy is very similar to, I guess, to power, but it comes from the word to self-govern independently, basically. I do research these things. What I wanted to lead on from this, basically, in terms of how that affects me and you sort of in day-to-day life, and sort of going back to that area of accountability, is we have autonomy over the decisions that we make, which means we are responsible for what happens next. If I decide to get behind the wheel of my car after I've been drinking, I am responsible for whatever happens after that. I've made that decision. I do not have any autonomy over the weather, so I am not responsible when it rains. That's part of, if you read about stoicism and things like that, that is all what that's based on, in terms of take control of what you can take control of, and sort of don't be bothered by things that are outside of your autonomy. In true Sexton style, what actually got me thinking about this, I was watching House of Cards, and there's a scene very early on. For anyone who hasn't seen it, by the way, it's an absolute must-watch when it comes to sort of accountability and just mindset and everything like that. Frank Underwood's just an absolute animal in a good way. But there's a scene that might even be the first or second episode. I think it is literally the first episode, where he's working in the White House, and he gets asked by the Secretary of State to be put on a project, and he thinks about it in a minute because he knows it's going to be loads and loads of work. But then he looks at her and he just says, "Do I have absolute autonomy on this?" And she says yes, and he decides to take it on. And what he means by that is, if I take this on, I am absolutely responsible for everything. No, I completely control the outcomes of this. Are you telling me that if I take this on, there's no micromanaging, there's no people sort of chipping in, this is my project and it will run exactly how I say? And that should really be how you look at a lot of things in life, because it's certainly the case with your own life. Because on the flip side of things, there are things that happen to you that you aren't in control of. Anything from sort of things that happen at work, things that happen to your health, if someone breaks up with you or whatever, blah, blah, blah. There's a million and one things. If you get really ill right in the middle of a training program that you're doing, there's a million and one things every day that can happen to you that you're not in control of. But what you are in control of, what you do have autonomy over, is how you respond to the event. And that means you are responsible for what happens next. You may not be responsible for the initial incident that occurs, but when there's that fork in the road and there's the different directions you can go in, you are responsible for what happens next. If you get ill in the middle of a training program, or when you were sort of really serious about going to the gym, you go one of two ways. Do you throw your hands up in the air and go, "Oh, I'm ill, I'm just going to sit on the sofa and eat like crap for a week and then just get even more out of shape"? Or are you going to go the other way, where you go, "Okay, look, I may not be able to lift loads of weight at the moment if I'm exhausted, but I'm going to feel better if I eat healthy, so I'm going to keep the diet up, and then maybe I'll just go for walks every day just to keep the heart rate up, just to keep the legs going, and I'll do what I can." I'm in that situation a little bit at the moment. I wouldn't say I'm particularly ill or anything, but I don't know what it is every time this time of year happens, and I don't know if I just cane it too hard over summer every year, but whenever sort of September comes and that change of weather comes from the boiling hot to moving into autumn, I always have a week or two where I just feel absolutely horrific and have no energy. And I haven't really gone to the gym this week, but what I've done instead is I've made sure I haven't just eaten like crap. I've tried to eat reasonably well, and just go for walks instead. Or if I do go to the gym, rather than doing a massive weight session, I might just row, or do a light row, or just do a 500 meters, so I'm exhausted but it's only sort of a minute or 2 minutes of output. And the beauty of autonomy and responsibility, which I've spoken about so many times on this channel, and being accountable and everything like that, is all about you have the ability to change things in your life and around you and things like that. I think the reason a lot of people really struggle with their mindset in terms of work, business maybe, sort of fitness, and certainly for guys, I know a massive one is dating, is they just feel like they can't do anything. They feel like whatever they do, women don't like them, or whatever they do they can't lose weight, or whatever they do they're just never going to earn a load of money. And that is such a defeatist mindset, and is also completely not true. But on a lower level, it's actually just a bit of an obfuscation. It's a bit of a sort of cop out, because if I just wake up and go, oh yeah, well, I'm just fat, that's just how I'm built, nothing I can do, that really, you're actually saying I'm just too lazy to do what needs to be done to get back into good shape. Realizing you have autonomy and taking responsibility is going, no, if I change my diet, if I change my cardio habits, if I change my gym habits, it may not take a week, it may not take a month, it honestly, depending on where you're at, it may not take a year, but eventually, if you eat properly and exercise properly, you will be healthier than you were beforehand. If you get in good shape, you secure yourself a good job, you dress properly, you wear good colognes, whatever, you will attract other people. Like that is how it works. It may not happen overnight, but if you keep changing the things that you can change, that will eventually happen. I want to do a little bit of a left turn, because I've talked about so far basically how autonomy comes with responsibility, and if you take power of something, you take autonomy of something, you are then responsible for the outcome. But I want to flip it a little bit and talk about how responsibility comes with autonomy. And I know I've mentioned some small examples of massive examples of how you don't control the weather, so you're not responsible for what happens. And I think you want to look at a lot of areas this comes in is work, is a major area. And if you're being criticised for certain things, I mean, it came as an example for me. I remember the only job I've ever had where I actually had to manage other people. It was such a shame, because it was, when I started, it was my absolute favourite job, because I basically got a small team to sort of train basically. But the problem was, I was responsible for them, but I didn't have autonomy over them. I was more senior than them, but I wasn't their boss. So I could give guidance and I could train them, but I couldn't discipline them, if that makes sense. So it was responsibility without autonomy, and that's something that you hear about. If you hear people moan about their jobs, or especially moan about their boss, what will happen is they're saying, I get told off for things I basically can't control. I'm given responsibility for things I don't have autonomy over. Like, your boss can't say to you, if this result happens, I'm going to be angry at you, but at the same time, you don't have the autonomy to affect what's happening. So, for example, if a client does something, or if a third party does something, or like I say, another employee in the business that you're not a line manager for does something, you can't be in trouble for that. You can't be in trouble for an outcome that you weren't responsible for, if that makes sense. Again, that resonated with me because of the job I just mentioned, but I know for a fact this happens a lot in teaching. Both my parents are teachers, my previous partner was a teacher, and obviously as a teacher you can do certain things, but you're not the kid's parent. You can't force a kid to do their homework. You can't force a kid to study outside of school hours. You can't force a kid to study when they're in school. All you can do is train them. and teachers get, in my opinion, get very unfairly sort of in trouble almost, and sort of labelled when they can make the best lessons in the world, but they can't force the children to study, so they have no autonomy over what's happening. All they have is the responsibility of the outcome. So if you're in a job that you're not enjoying, I know this is a slight left turn, slight tangent, but if you're in a job you're not enjoying, think about that, because that is certainly something. If you are having sort of brushes up with your boss or whatever, that's something that you can certainly bring up. If you're getting in trouble for things, actually stop and think, am I responsible for the outcome of that? It could be anything from, if you work behind the bar and you finish your shift and customers have smashed 3 glasses or whatever. Again, this is something that's happened to me before in an old job. Customers have smashed 3 glasses before, and your manager's come in and had a go and said, well, why are 3 glasses getting broken on your shift? Because I had absolutely no autonomy over my customers. I cannot change if these 3 idiots want to drop their glasses. That's not on me, so I can't get in trouble for it. I hope that makes sense. I hope I've broken that down in a way that yeah, makes sense basically. So in terms of something you can actually take from this video and something you can actually do, if you're in a place in your life where you're not happy at the moment, something that I'd advise doing is write a physical list of everything in your life, decisions wise, that you are in control of, habits wise, what time you wake up, what you eat, how often you go to the gym, how many jobs you've applied for if you're looking for a job, and things like that. Anything you are in charge of, anything you have autonomy over, make a list of it. And then physically, I don't like doing it on my phone, I do it on this thing, which I've mentioned before on my other thing. I like writing it down and physically right next to that thing, right, what's one thing I can do differently, an action I can take to take control of this and make it a little bit better. And those small habits over time will start to add up. Thank you for making it all the way to the end. I hope you appreciate these videos. I do try and convey some reasonable insights and opinion in them. If you do find any of it useful, as always, please do consider liking, subscribing, comment any other advice you have below, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, take care, lads.